My name is Christiana Freeland, and I am discussing the novel by Kate Chopin. I believe that's how you pronounce her last name, The Awakening, and just answering a couple questions off of that. So, the first question that was provided was, why does Edna do what she does at the end of the story? I think that Edna kind of looked at what her life was going to be like in the future in contrast to what she had experienced in the last little bit of her life and felt hopeless. I think she tasted freedom that she couldn't live without. And I think she realized that if she were to return to her life with her husband and her two sons and kind of slip back under the standards for society of women at the time, that she was going to give up a lot of her freedom and a lot of the individualism that she had discovered. And so she, I think, weighed her options when she was standing at that seashore, and I think there's some symbolism in her shedding all of her clothing and going out into the water naked, because society at the time, like, women were supposed to wear like clothes up to their neck and like couldn't even show their ankles basically. And I think she just kind of shed all of society's standards for her by doing that. And she went out into the water and she swam out as far as she could and drowned herself, because I think she couldn't bear the thought of returning back to that life of complacency and kind of being ruled by her husband and not being able to have her own thoughts and her own opinions and her own approaches to how she wanted to raise her children and how she wanted to dress and act and talk and stuff. So that would be my answer to the first question. The second one was, what does it symbolize? I'm assuming it is talking about her going and committing suicide. And I kind of already have touched on this, but I think that, I have my notes in front of me, that like, it was utter despair. I think it was a decision made in utter despair that she just couldn't even imagine going back into that. And so I think her committing suicide is symbolic of her not being willing to go back into that lifestyle. Maybe not being willing, and also not feeling strong enough, because I think for a woman to contain all that she is, all her opinions, all her thoughts, all her tactics, and how she wants to raise her children or run her business or do whatever, I think that took a lot of strength for women to kind of bite their tongue and just kind of slip into society's standards. And I think that she felt like she couldn't do that anymore, since I had previously stated, because she had already tasted that freedom, and she was like, I don't think I can live without that anymore. I thought it was so sad, that ending. It kind of surprised me, because I kind of expected her to go back and kind of keep rocking the boat with like standards for women in society, and I don't know, and raise her sons to like be better than her husband was. But that obviously was not the ending. I do believe there's a lot of symbolism there too, but yeah, it's kind of sad. And then the third question is, what does the story mean and or what is important for us as readers? And I believe that this story, called The Awakening, is just a story of empowerment for women, or really any individual that suffers under being scrutinized or put under a lot of the weight of standards that women were put under during that time. And I think it's a story about identity and social standards. Like, it's pretty crazy how powerful society's standards are, or can be, for better or for worse. And I think that's basically sums up the story. It's about a woman who slowly starts discovering herself and thinking of herself as an individual rather than the property of a man, and starts thinking, I can paint and I can self-express, and maybe I can even own my own place, and maybe I can use the money for my artwork to get out of this house and be able to move out on my own and think my own thoughts and do my own thing, and, you know, have an exciting life. And she starts to discover that individualism, and then, you know, when it's kind of seems like she's not going to be able to keep discovering that part of herself, or she has to return back to society's standards, she can't handle that. And so that's what I believe it's symbolic of, just that pressure, that being unable to return to that. And the next question is, what about this story is important for us as readers? And I think I already said that one, actually. I think the fourth question is, what does the awakening where does The Awakening stand in terms of romanticism and versus realism? I kind of struggled with this. Like, my immediate response was realism, because it's like a very real, like, there's no dragons, there's nothing like, crazy, and it's kind of like a bland story and pretty straightforward, and it's occurring in like history, so like it's something that would have actually maybe possibly happened, and that kind of thing. But the more and more I thought about it, I was kind of like, I think it takes a very realistic approach as far as how the story plays out, what happens, what's going on, what you're being told as a reader. You have a pretty good inside view of her frustration towards her lifestyle. But I think that it does have a hint of romanticism in it when it comes to her discovering herself, because you kind of obviously pick up on it at the beginning of the novel when it talks about her listening to the piano and like seeing her artwork and just kind of her displeasure with how her husband reacts to her parenting, and like you kind of start seeing, okay, she's obviously unhappy with her life. But I think just the way the author Kate captured the development of her identifying as an individual rather than just property, I think there is a touch of romanticism in that. I could be wrong, but that's kind of how I perceived it and read it. And when I read the comparison chart that was listed with this discussion board, that was kind of what popped into my head. Like, the story in and of itself seems very rooted in realism, and then her self-discovery seems like it's rooted more in romanticism. So those are my answers to the 4 questions that we were asked to answer, and I will look into everyone else's videos and comment my responses to those. Thanks!